The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale, sickly glow over row after row of forgotten things. Discounted socks with mismatched partners, plastic storage bins with cracked lids, half-empty bottles of lotion from brands no one remembered. This was the kind of place people came to when they needed something cheap, something temporary, something that didn't matter much in the grand scheme. But for the man standing near the back of aisle 9, nothing about this place felt temporary. Every shelf, every bin, every dusty display held the weight of a question he couldn't stop asking. He wasn't dressed like a regular shopper. His flannel shirt, once red, now faded to a soft rust, was buttoned all the way up, even though the store was warm. His jeans were worn thin at the knees and his boots scuffed from miles of pavement. In one hand, he carried a dented thermos, the kind that keeps coffee hot for hours. Though he hadn't taken a sip in a while, he moved slowly, deliberately, eyes scanning not for deals but for signs, for anything that might look familiar. A teenage cashier stacking clearance mugs near the seasonal aisle noticed him first. She'd seen plenty of odd characters wander through this store, people muttering to themselves, folks digging through donation bins like they were treasure chests. But there was something different about this man. He didn't seem confused exactly, more like waiting, as if he expected something to happen here, in this sea of marked-down junk. She watched him pause in front of a rack of women's sweaters, sizes too small for anyone over 16. His fingers hovered over a pale blue cardigan with a loose thread at the cuff. He didn't touch it, just stared. Then he moved on. When he passed her station, she couldn't help herself. "You must be lost," she said gently, nodding toward the far end of the store. "The clearance section is that way." He stopped, turned, looked at her with eyes that seemed older than his face. There was no irritation, no embarrassment, just a quiet weariness that made her feel suddenly small. He gave a slow nod like he'd heard this before and said nothing. Just kept walking, but he didn't head toward clearance. Instead, he turned down the next aisle, home goods, and stopped in front of a bin labeled Misc photo albums, $1 each. His breath hitched, just slightly. This was why he kept coming back 3 years. 3 years since the last time he'd seen his daughter. Not in a hospital bed, not at a graduation, not even in a fight. Just gone. One morning, she'd left for the bus station downtown, backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in her pocket, a half-eaten granola bar in her hand. She'd texted him a photo from the platform. "Next stop, new life." With a winking emoji, he'd laughed, replied with a heart, and gone back to fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen. That was the last message. The bus arrived. She got on, and somewhere between Tulsa and wherever she was headed, she vanished. At first, it was panic. Calls to the bus company, the police, hospitals, shelters, flyers taped to lampposts, sleepless nights staring at her empty room, her bed still made, her favorite mug in the cupboard. Then came the theories: kidnapping, accident, runaway. But nothing stuck. No body, no ransom note, no trail, just silence, except there were rumors. Whispers from truckers at the diner, from volunteers at the rescue mission. Saw a girl matching her description at a thrift store in Broken Arrow. Heard she was working nights at a gas station near Sand Springs. Most leads fizzled, but one detail kept coming back: secondhand stores, donation centers, clearance bins. Like she'd been moving through the margins of the city, leaving behind traces in the places no one looked twice at. So he started looking. Not with flyers or police reports, but with his own 2 feet. Every weekend he'd visit a different discount store, Goodwill or flea market within a 50-mile radius. He'd walk the aisles slowly, scanning for anything that might have belonged to her. A hair tie with a chipped bead, a notebook with her handwriting, a photo tucked into a used book. He knew it sounded crazy. Knew people probably thought he was unhinged, or worse, dangerous. But grief doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it just makes you stubborn. Today, like so many days before, the bins held nothing but strangers' memories. Faded wedding photos, baby pictures with names scribbled on the back in ink that had bled, vacation shots of beaches he'd never seen. He flipped through one album, smiling faces in front of a lighthouse, then another, kids in Halloween costumes, grinning with missing teeth. Nothing. He was about to walk away when his thumb caught on something stiff near the bottom of the bin. It was a torn corner of a photograph, half stuck to the inside of a warped plastic sleeve. He carefully peeled it free. The image was water damaged, the colors bleeding into one another like wet paint. But there in the center stood a young woman with shoulder-length dark hair, wearing a denim jacket he recognized instantly. It was the one she'd bought at that little vintage shop near the university, the one with the tiny embroidered star on the pocket. He'd teased her for spending $50 on an old jacket. She'd rolled her eyes and said, "It's got character, Dad." His hands began to shake. She wasn't alone in the photo. Beside her stood a man he didn't know, tall, bearded, wearing a faded band t-shirt. They were standing in front of a mural, a blue heron in flight, wings spread wide, painted on a brick wall with rusted train tracks running beneath it. The background was blurry, but the mural was clear enough. And she was smiling, not her big, full laugh, but a small, cautious smile like she was trying it on for size. She looked older, tired, but alive. The man's chest tightened. He hadn't let himself hope in so long. Hope felt like a betrayal, like if he believed she was okay, he'd stop looking and then she'd really be gone. But this was real, tangible. Proof that she hadn't disappeared into thin air. She'd been here, recently, close enough to drop a photo in a donation bin that ended up 10 miles from where he lived. He bought the album without a word, handing over a crumpled dollar bill to the cashier who'd spoken to him earlier. She didn't ask questions, just rang it up and slid it across the counter in a thin plastic bag. Outside, the Oklahoma wind kicked up dust along the parking lot. He sat on the curb, thermos forgotten beside him, and opened the album again under the gray afternoon sky. He traced the edge of the photo with his thumb, as if he could smooth out the damage, bring her back into focus. Why was she with that man? Where was this mural? And most importantly, why hadn't she reached out? He thought about calling the police, about showing them the photo, asking them to track down the location. But something stopped him. If she'd wanted to be found, she would have made it easier. The fact that this photo ended up in a clearance bin felt intentional, like a breadcrumb left for someone who knew how to look. Maybe she was testing him, or protecting him, or both. He closed the album and stood up, tucking it carefully inside his jacket. The sun was sinking behind the strip mall, casting long shadows across the asphalt. He didn't feel lost anymore. Not exactly, but he didn't feel found either. He felt like a man standing on the edge of a door he wasn't sure he should open. Back in his old pickup, he started the engine and pulled onto the road. The radio stayed off. The only sound was the hum of tires on pavement and the quiet thud of his own heartbeat. He drove past the bus station where she'd last been seen, past the diner where they used to eat pancakes on Sunday mornings, past the park where she'd learned to ride a bike, wobbling down the path with training wheels, yelling, "Don't let go, Dad." And he hadn't, not until she was ready. Now he wondered if he'd ever really let go. That night, he sat at his kitchen table under a single hanging bulb. The photo lay in front of him, propped against a salt shaker. He poured himself a cup of cold coffee from the thermos and stared at her face for a long time. Not with anger, not with despair, but with a quiet, aching curiosity. Who had she become in these 3 years? What had she been running from? And was there still a place for him in whatever life she'd built? He didn't have answers. But for the first time in a long time, he had a direction. Tomorrow, he'd find that mural. And from there, he'd follow whatever trail she'd left behind, even if it led him somewhere he wasn't ready to go. Because being lost wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing was stopping the search, and he wasn't done yet. The photo sat on the kitchen table for 3 days. Not tucked away, not hidden in a drawer, right there in the open like it needed air. Every morning before the sun even crept over the rooftops, he'd sit with it, coffee cooling in his mug, eyes tracing the lines of her face, the curve of her shoulder, the way she leaned slightly toward the stranger beside her. It wasn't just that she was alive. It was that she looked different. Not broken, not scared, at least not in that moment, but changed. Like someone who'd walked through fire and come out the other side with new skin. He didn't show the photo to anyone. Not the police, not his brother, not the woman at the church who kept asking if there'd been any news. He knew how it would go. They'd call it circumstantial. Say it could be anyone. Tell him not to get his hopes up. And maybe they'd be right, but this wasn't about proof. It was about possibility. And possibility, however thin, was something he hadn't held in years. On the 4th morning, he made a decision. He'd find that mural. If it was real, and he believed it was, it had to be somewhere nearby. Murals like that didn't just appear in random towns. They were landmarks, community projects, pieces of local pride. So he started where he always did. The library. The downtown branch was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt respectful, like the building itself understood people came here to find things they'd lost. He asked the librarian, a woman with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, if they had any books or archives on local street art. She blinked, surprised, then smiled. Actually, she said, we just finished digitizing a project on public murals in the metro area. Would you like to see it? He followed her to a computer in the corner. She pulled up a map dotted with colorful pins, each one linked to a photo, a description, sometimes even the artist's name. His fingers hovered over the mouse. He typed Blue Heron into the search bar. One result, East 11th Street, the librarian read aloud. Mural titled Flight Path, painted in 2021 by a collective called Brush and Rail. It's on the side of the old Sunnyside laundromat, though I hear the building's been closed for a while. His heart thumped, but he kept his face calm. Thank you, he said, voice steady. That's exactly what I needed. He drove there that afternoon. The neighborhood was quieter than he expected. Older homes with overgrown lawns, a corner store with bars on the windows, a bus stop bench missing one leg. And there, on the side of a boarded-up brick building with peeling paint and a rusted closed sign hanging crooked on the door, was the mural. It was even more striking in person. The blue heron's wings stretched nearly 10 feet across, feathers rendered in shades of slate and sky, eyes sharp and watchful. Beneath it, the train tracks curved into the distance, painted with such realism he almost expected to hear a whistle. He stood there for a long time, comparing it to the background in the photo. It was the same, undeniably. Now came the harder part, finding out if she'd actually been here. He knocked on the door of the house next door, a small bungalow with a chain-link fence and a patchy lawn. An older man answered, wearing a baseball cap and holding a wrench. Yeah? He said, not unkindly, but not inviting either. I'm sorry to bother you, the man said. I'm trying to track down someone who might have been around here a few months back. A young woman, maybe late 20s, dark hair. She was photographed in front of that mural. The neighbor squinted, then nodded slowly. Oh, her. Yeah, I seen her. She used to come by the community garden out back, helped plant tomatoes, pulled weeds. Real quiet. Didn't talk much, but always said hello. Do you know her name? Nah. Folks just called her Bird on account of her always watching that heron like it meant something. Bird. The word settled in his chest like a stone. She'd loved birds as a kid. Kept a journal of every species she spotted, could mimic their calls better than any app. He hadn't heard that nickname in 20 years. Did she live around here? He asked. Not exactly. Stayed at the Haven House for a while. That shelter over on Garnett. Worked nights at the Starlight Diner, you know the one? Near the gas station with the flickering sign. He did. He'd driven past it 100 times. Thanks, he said. You've been a big help. He didn't go to the diner that night. He wanted to be sure. So he waited until morning, showered, put on a clean shirt, and walked in like any other customer. The Starlight was the kind of place that smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and decades of worn vinyl booths. A jukebox played softly in the corner, even though no one had put in a quarter. He took a seat in the back booth, the one with the best view of the door and the counter. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read Lou's brought him a menu. Coffee? She asked. Please. She poured it without looking up. You from around here? Not really, he said. Just passing through. She gave a small nod and walked away. He watched the staff. 2 cooks in the kitchen, another server refilling ketchup bottles, a young man wiping down tables. No one matched the woman in the photo. He stayed for an hour, ordered toast, sipped his coffee, listened to the hum of conversation. Nothing. On his way out, he stopped at the register. Used to have a girl work here, dark hair, quiet. Maybe a few months back? The manager, a heavy-set man with a pencil behind his ear, frowned. You mean Bird? She quit. Didn't say why. Just left a note pinned to the break room fridge. Thanks for everything. Gotta go. That was, 6 weeks ago? Did she say where she was headed? Nope, but she seemed scared, like she was running from something. Or someone. The man thanked him and stepped outside. The sun was high now, hot on his neck. He leaned against his truck, letting the information settle. She'd been here, working, living, trying to build something, and then she'd vanished again, not into thin air, but by choice. That meant she was still in control, still protecting herself, but why? That night he returned to the photo. He studied the man beside her, the beard, the t-shirt with the faded logo he couldn't quite make out, the way his hand rested lightly on the wall behind her, not touching her, but close. Protective or possessive? He didn't know, but he needed to know more. He went back to the clearance bin the next week. Same store, same aisle. He bought 2 more albums, hoping for another clue. Nothing. But as he was leaving, the same teenage cashier, the one who'd told him he was lost, caught his eye. "You're still looking," she said, not as a question. He paused. "Yeah, for her?" He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. She reached under the counter and pulled out a small envelope. "This was in the bin this morning. Taped to another album. I thought, maybe it was for you." Inside was a single sheet of lined paper torn from a notebook. On it, written in neat, careful handwriting, were 3 words, and "Meet me tonight." No name. No time. No place. But he knew. He drove to the mural just after sunset. The streetlights hadn't come on yet, and the heron seemed to glow in the fading light. He waited by the rusted chain-link fence that bordered the old laundromat lot. Crickets chirped. A distant train rumbled. His hands were in his pockets, heart steady but alert. Then, from the alley between the bodega and the shuttered beauty supply, a figure emerged. Not his daughter. A woman, maybe mid-30s, with short-cropped hair and ink stains on her fingers. She wore a hoodie despite the warmth and kept her distance. "You're her dad," she said. It wasn't a guess, he nodded. "And you knew her." "I lived with her at Haven House for 3 months. She crossed her arms. She told me about you. Said you'd never stop looking. Why didn't she come to me? Because she thought you'd try to fix it. And some things can't be fixed. Only survived." He didn't argue, just listened. "She left an abusive relationship," the woman said quietly. "Not just any guy. Someone dangerous, connected. She changed her name, cut off her phone, moved every few weeks. She didn't ghost you because she didn't love you. She ghosted you to keep you safe. If he found her through you." She couldn't live with that. The words hit him like a slow wave. Cold, then heavy, then real. All this time he'd thought she'd abandoned him. But she'd been shielding him. "Where is she now?" he asked. "I don't know. She left Haven House suddenly. Said she had a lead on a job out of state, but she left something for you." The woman reached into her pocket and handed him a small key. "Locker 42 at the Greyhound station. She said if you ever found the mural, you'd know what to do." He took the key. It was cold in his palm. "Why tell me all this?" he asked. "Because she's still your daughter," the woman said, "and you deserve to know the truth, even if it hurts." She turned to leave, then stopped. She kept a photo of you in her wallet, the one from her high school graduation. Said it reminded her that someone out there still believed she was worth saving. He stood there long after she disappeared into the shadows. The city hummed around him. Cars passing, a dog barking, the distant chime of a cash register. But inside, everything was quiet, clear. He wasn't chasing a ghost anymore. He was following a trail laid with love and fear and courage. And for the first time he understood. She hadn't been lost. She'd been hiding in plain sight. And now, maybe, just maybe, she was ready to be found. The Greyhound station smelled like old coffee, diesel fumes, and the kind of loneliness that settles into your bones if you sit on those plastic chairs too long. He'd been there before, years ago, dropping her off for a summer camp bus, watching her wave from the window until the coach turned the corner and vanished. Now he walked in like a stranger, the small key heavy in his pocket. Locker 42 was near the back, tucked between a vending machine that blinked out of order and a bulletin board plastered with faded flyers for ride shares and lost pets. He knelt, slid the key into the lock, and turned. It clicked open with a soft, metallic sigh. Inside wasn't much, just a manila envelope slightly bent and a cheap plastic hairbrush with a few dark strands still caught in the bristles. He recognized the brush. She'd bought it at a gas station once, complaining that the one at home gave her static. He'd laughed and said, "Since when do you care about static?" She'd rolled her eyes and tossed it in the cart anyway. He took the envelope and stepped outside into the weak morning light. sat on a bench near the bus bays where the air was fresher and opened it. No letter, no note, just a single sheet of paper with a hand-drawn map, a rough sketch of streets, a park, a bench beneath a large oak tree. In the corner, written in that same careful handwriting, "If you're reading this, you found the mural. Come here alone Saturday, 10 a.m. That was 3 days away. He folded the map and tucked it into his shirt pocket right over his heart. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt like the safest place for it, like keeping a promise close. The next few days passed in a strange kind of quiet. He didn't tell anyone, didn't pace, didn't rehearse what he'd say. He just went about his routine, fixed the porch step that had been wobbling for months, watered the tomato plants his neighbor had given him last spring, even swept the garage for the first time in years. But beneath the calm, everything inside him was tuned to one frequency: Saturday. 10 a.m. the oak tree. He studied the map until he knew every curve of it by memory. The park wasn't far, just a 20-minute walk from the mural. A place he'd driven past 100 times but never stopped at. Now it felt like the center of the world. Saturday morning came gray and soft, the kind of day where the sky holds its breath. He wore the same clean flannel he'd worn to the diner, jeans without holes, boots polished just enough to look like he'd tried. He didn't bring flowers, didn't bring a speech, just himself. He arrived early, 9:40, and found the bench beneath the oak. It was old, the wood worn smooth by years of hands and weather, the bark of the tree gnarled and strong. He sat, watched a squirrel dart up the trunk, listened to kids laughing near the playground, felt the weight of every second tick by. At 9:58, he saw her. She came from the path that wound around the duck pond, walking slowly, hands in the pockets of a light jacket. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back in a loose knot. She wore no makeup, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Lines from squinting into sunrises, maybe, or from nights spent staring at ceilings. But it was her, undeniably. She stopped about 10 feet away. Didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just looked at him like she was seeing a ghost, or maybe like she was the ghost and he was the real one. He stood. Didn't move closer. Just met her gaze. "You came," she said. Her voice was softer than he remembered, a little rougher, like it had carried too many unspoken words. "You asked me to." A pause. A breeze stirred the leaves above them. "I didn't think you would," she said. "Why not?" "Because I left." Without a word? For 3 years. Most people wouldn't forgive that. "I didn't come here to forgive you," he said gently. "I came because I missed you." She looked down, then back up. Her eyes were bright, but she blinked fast, like she was holding something back. "I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to." "I know," he said. That surprised her. "You know?" "A woman told me. At the mural. Said you were running from someone dangerous. That you cut ties to protect me." She let out a breath, half relief, half sorrow. His name was Vance. He worked in security. Private contracts off the books. At first, he was charming. Said all the right things, then it got worse, threats, control. One night he smashed my phone and said if I ever called the police, he'd make sure you had an accident. She swallowed. I couldn't risk that. So I disappeared, changed everything, even my name. He didn't interrupt, just listened, let her say it all. "I tried to send a postcard once," she went on, "from a town in Arkansas. But I got scared. What if it got traced? What if he found me through you? So I threw it away." She looked at him, really looked. "I thought about you every single day. Wondered if you were okay, if you hated me." "I never hated you," he said. "I just missed you. And worried. And hoped." She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of him. She didn't hug him, not yet. But she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote this the night I left. Never sent it. But I kept it. In case I ever saw you again." He opened it. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written in tears. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Don't look for me, not because I don't love you, but because I love you too much to put you in danger. I'll come back when it's safe. I promise." And bird. He folded it carefully and handed it back. "You kept your promise," he said. She nodded, tears finally spilling over. "It's safe now. He's gone. Not dead, just gone. Moved overseas for work, got caught up in something else. The people at Haven House helped me get a restraining order, a new ID. I'm finally free. He reached out then, not to pull her in, but to touch her arm, just to feel that she was real. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. She leaned into the touch just slightly. "I was so scared you'd be angry." "I was sad," he admitted, "but never angry. You did what you had to do, and you survived. That's what matters." They sat on the bench then, side by side, not speaking for a long while, just watching the world go by, the joggers, the dog walkers, the old man feeding pigeons. It wasn't perfect. There were years missing between them, wounds that would take time to heal, stories they'd need to tell slowly, carefully. But they were here, together. After a while, she turned to him. "Do you still have that thermos?" He smiled. "Yeah, still leaks a little, but it holds. Can I have some coffee?" He pulled it from his bag, unscrewed the cap, and poured a little into the lid. She took it, sipped, made a face. "Still too strong." "Some things never change," he said. She laughed, really laughed, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Later, they walked back toward the street, not in a hurry. She told him about the diner, the garden, the nights she'd lie awake wondering if he still kept her favorite mug in the cupboard. He told her about the clearance bins, the photo, the way he'd memorized every detail of that mural just in case it led him to her. "I used to go to that store every week," he said, "just in case you left another sign." "I almost did," she admitted. "Once I found a sweater there, the blue one you gave me for my birthday. It was in the donation pile. I bought it back. Still have it." He didn't say anything, just squeezed her shoulder. They stopped at the edge of the park where the sidewalk met the road. "Where are you staying now?" he asked, with a friend, near the university. "Got a job at a bookstore. It's quiet, safe. You don't have to stay there," he said. "The house is still there. Your room?" "I never changed it." She looked at him, eyes searching his face. "You kept it? Everything? Even the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling?" A small smile tugged at her lips. "They're probably peeling by now." "Maybe, but they still glow." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I come see it?" "Anytime," he said. "Today, if you want." She nodded. "Okay, but not yet. Let me get my things. Give me a day. Take all the time you need." They stood there a little longer, neither wanting to say goodbye again. Finally, she hugged him. Quick, tight, like she was afraid he'd vanish if she held on too long. Then she stepped back. "I'm sorry it took so long," she whispered. "You're here now," he said. "That's all that matters." She walked away, but this time she turned at the corner and waved. He waved back, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't watch her disappear. He just knew she'd be back. Because some promises, even the quiet ones, are meant to be kept. He didn't sleep much that night. Not because he was anxious, though he was, but because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. Not the ghost he'd been chasing through clearance bins and bus stations, but the real her. Tired, cautious but standing in the sunlight, sipping coffee from a thermos lid like nothing had changed. Like 3 years could just fold up and tuck themselves away like old receipts in a drawer, but they couldn't, and he knew that. The next morning, he cleaned the house. Not the quick sweep and wipe kind of clean, but the deep kind, the kind that says, "Someone matters enough for me to care." He washed the windows until they sparkled, replaced the burnt-out bulb in the hallway, vacuumed the rug in her room, even though no one had walked on it in years. He even dug out the old can of glow paint and touched up the stars on her ceiling, tiny dots of light that would only show in the dark just like before. He didn't do it to impress her. He did it because it felt like a way of saying, "I remembered, I waited. I'm ready." By afternoon, he was sitting on the porch watching the neighbor's cat chase a leaf in the wind when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Got my things. Can I come by?" His fingers hovered over the screen for a second before he typed back, "Doors open." She arrived just before sunset, carrying a single duffel bag and a cardboard box tied with twine. No fanfare, no hesitation. She walked up the driveway like she belonged there, like she'd never left. He met her at the door. "You made it." "I did." She looked past him into the hallway. "It smells like lemon polish." "Old habit," he said. "Your mom always said a clean house meant a clear mind." She smiled faintly at the mention of her mother, then stepped inside. Her eyes went straight to the stairs. "Can I?" "Go ahead." He heard her footsteps on the wood, slow at first, then quicker, like she was remembering the rhythm. A moment later, a soft gasp floated down. He didn't follow. Gave her space. When she came back down, her eyes were wet but calm. "The stars still glow," she said. "Told you they would." She set the box on the kitchen table and opened it. Inside were books. A framed photo of the two of them at the state fair, her on his shoulders, cotton candy in hand. A chipped ceramic mug painted with lopsided daisies, something she'd made in elementary school, and a small potted succulent. "I kept the things that mattered," she said. "The rest, I left behind," he nodded. "Hungry?" They made dinner together. Simple stuff. Pasta, garlic bread, a salad with tomatoes from his garden. They didn't talk about the past right away. Instead, they talked about the bookstore where she worked. The grumpy cat that slept in the poetry section. The way the owner let her rearrange the shelves just so. He told her about the neighbor who kept leaving zucchini on his porch. "I swear, that plant's got a vendetta." And how he'd started fixing old radios just to pass the time. It felt easy. Not forced. Like they were picking up a conversation that had only paused, not ended. Later, over coffee at the table, she finally said it. "I should have told you what was happening." He stirred his cup. "You thought you were protecting me." "I was. But I also didn't want you to see me like that. Scared, broken, hiding in shelters. I didn't want you to think I was weak." "You're the strongest person I know," he said quietly. "Walking away from someone who hurt you? That's not weakness. That's courage." She looked down, twisting the ring on her finger. A simple silver band she'd bought herself, she'd told him once, to remind herself she belonged to no one but herself. "I used to dream about coming home," she said, "but I was afraid you'd look at me and only see what I'd lost, not who I'd become." "I see you," he said. "All of you. The girl who climbed trees and the woman who survived. Both matter." She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her skin was warm, real. They talked late into the night, about the shelter, the kind strangers who'd helped her, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep wondering if he'd given up on her. He told her about the days he'd driven in circles, the flyers that faded in the rain. The moment he found the photo and felt something inside him crack open. "I kept thinking," he said, "that if I just looked hard enough, I'd find you. But maybe what I really needed was to trust that you'd find your way back when you were ready. I wasn't ready until I knew I wouldn't drag you into my mess," she said. "Vance had connections. People who owed him favors. I couldn't risk him showing up here angry, looking for me through you. But he's gone now. He's overseas. Got tangled up in some shady contract job in Eastern Europe. Last I heard, he's not coming back. And even if he did, I've got papers now, protection. A new name that's legal, not just a cover. I'm not hiding anymore." He studied her face, the set of her jaw, the steadiness in her eyes. She wasn't the same person who'd left. She was harder in some places, softer in others. But she was whole, and she was here. The next few days settled into a quiet rhythm. She took the spare room at first, not her old one, saying she needed time to relearn the walls. He didn't argue. Let her move at her own pace. She started helping around the house, cooking, folding laundry, watering the plants. Small things, but each one felt like a stitch mending a tear. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of old mail, she found a stack of unopened letters addressed to her. "All postmarked from the first year she was gone. You kept them?" she asked, holding one up. "Couldn't throw them away," he said. "Didn't know if you'd want them." She opened the top one. It was from a college friend, asking if she was okay, saying they missed her. She read it silently, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "I'll read them later," she said, "when I'm ready." He understood. That evening they sat on the porch as fireflies blinked in the yard. The air was warm, thick with the smell of cut grass and distant rain. "Do you ever regret leaving?" he asked gently. She thought for a long time. "Not leaving him. Never that, but I regret not finding a way to tell you. Even a coded message, even a symbol. I just froze. Fear does that. It narrows your world until all you can see is survival." "You survived," he said. "That's what counts." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you didn't stop looking." "I never could," he said. "You're my daughter. That doesn't go away, no matter how far you wander." They sat in silence after that, watching the sky deepen from blue to violet. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car door slammed. Life, ordinary and beautiful, moved on around them. The next morning, she knocked on his bedroom door before sunrise. "I'm going to the store," she said. "Need anything?" He rubbed his eyes. "Just coffee. The dark roast." She nodded and headed out. He didn't think much of it until he saw which store she'd gone to. Through the window, he watched her walk toward the big discount department store on the edge of town, the one with the clearance bins. The one where it all began. He didn't follow. Didn't need to. An hour later, she returned, holding a small paper bag. She set it on the kitchen table and pulled out a $1 photo album, the kind with the plastic sleeves and the warped cover. "I went back," she said. "To the bin." He stared. "Why?" "Because I left something there on purpose," she said. "Not just the photo of us at the mural. I left another one, tucked deep in the back. A new one." She opened the album and flipped to the last page. There, in a slightly crooked sleeve, was a photo of him, standing alone in aisle 9, looking lost, thermos in hand, eyes searching the shelves like they held answers. "I took it the day after I saw you there," she whispered. From across the store.
"I didn't want you to see me."
"But I needed you to know I saw you. That I knew you were looking." He touched the photo with trembling fingers. "You were there that whole time?" "Watching, waiting, wondering if you'd find the clue. Hoping you would. Terrified you wouldn't." He looked at her, really looked. "All this time, you were leaving a trail just for me." She nodded. "I couldn't come home, but I could leave breadcrumbs. Just in case you were still hungry." He pulled her into a hug then, long, tight, the kind that says everything words can't. She hugged back, her face buried in his shoulder, breathing like she was finally safe. Later, they sat at the table with the 2 albums side by side, one filled with strangers' memories, the other with their own. Past and present, loss and return, fear and faith, all bound together by a single, stubborn thread, love that refused to let go. And in that quiet kitchen, with the morning light spilling through the window, neither of them felt lost anymore. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, soft and golden, catching dust motes in the air like tiny sparks. The house was quiet, but not the heavy kind of quiet that used to hang in the rooms after she disappeared, the kind that felt like waiting. This quiet was different. It was full, like the silence between notes in a song that's finally found its melody. She was at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming something under her breath, something old, something he remembered from when she was little. He sat at the table, nursing a cup of coffee, watching her move around the kitchen like she'd never left. Like the past 3 years were just a bad dream they'd both woken up from. But they weren't. And that was okay. Over breakfast, she told him about her plans. She'd kept her job at the bookstore, liked the rhythm of it, the smell of paper and ink, the way customers would come in looking for one thing and leave with something entirely different, like life had surprised them. She'd also signed up for night classes at the community college. Not for a degree, not yet, just to learn. "I missed thinking," she said, pouring syrup over her stack. "Missed feeling like my brain was mine again." He nodded. "You always did love learning." "I forgot how much," she admitted. "When you're just trying to stay safe, you stop dreaming." "Now, I want to dream again." He didn't say anything, just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Later that day, they drove to the discount store. Not to search, not to hunt for clues, but just to walk through it together. Hand in hand, like father and daughter on an ordinary errand, they passed the clearance bins, the racks of mismatched socks, the seasonal aisle with its leftover holiday decorations. When they reached aisle 9, she stopped. "This is where I saw you," she said softly, standing right there looking so lost. He looked at the spot. "I wasn't lost," he said. "I was just waiting for you to show me the way." She smiled, a real one this time, warm, unguarded. "You found it anyway. They didn't buy anything. Just walked the aisles slowly, talking about nothing important. The price of laundry detergent, the weird smell of the carpet cleaner display, the way the fluorescent lights made everything look a little sad. But it didn't feel sad. It felt like healing." That evening, she brought down a box from her old closet, something she'd packed before she left but never taken with her. Inside were old journals, ticket stubs, dried flowers pressed between notebook pages, and a small wooden bird carved from cherry wood. "You made this for me," she said, holding it up. "When I was 10, said it would keep me safe." He turned it over in his hands. The carving was rough, amateurish, but full of care. I forgot about that. I carried it for years, she said. Even when I ran, I kept it in my pocket, felt like a piece of home I could hold on to. He handed it back. You can keep it here now, where it belongs. She placed it on the windowsill in her room, the same spot it had lived in for a decade. Feels right, she said. Days turned into weeks. They fell into a new kind of normal. She'd leave for work in the morning, come home smelling like old books and coffee. He'd fix things around the house, a leaky faucet, a squeaky hinge, the porch light that kept flickering. In the evenings, they'd sit on the back steps, watching the sky change color, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes, she'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced she heard a car idling outside or a knock at the door. He'd hear her pacing, go to her room and just sit in the doorway until her breathing slowed. He never pushed, never said, "It's okay," just stayed. And that was enough. One Saturday they went to the park, the same one with the oak tree. She brought a blanket, a thermos of tea, and a book she'd been meaning to read. They sat in the shade, not speaking much, just enjoying the sun on their faces and the sound of kids laughing nearby. At one point she looked at him and said, "Do you think we'll ever get back the time we lost?" He thought about it. Not the days, no. But maybe we don't need to. Maybe what matters is what we do with the days we have now. She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. I like that. They stayed until the sun dipped low, painting the clouds in streaks of pink and orange. On the walk back to the car, she stopped and picked up a smooth stone from the path. For my collection, she said, slipping it into her pocket. He remembered that too. How she used to gather stones as a kid, lining them up on her windowsill like tiny guardians. Still collecting? Always, she said. Some things are worth holding on to. Back at the house, she went to her room to unpack a few more boxes. He stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Then he heard her call his name. He found her standing in front of the closet, holding a sweater, the pale blue one from the photo, the one with the loose thread. She'd kept it all this time. I wore this the day I took that picture, she said, at the mural. It was cold and I wanted to feel like I had something familiar with me. You look happy in it, he said. I was trying to be, she admitted, but I was scared. That man in the photo, he wasn't Vance, he was a friend from the shelter. He stood with me while I took the picture just in case. Said if anyone came looking, they'd see I wasn't alone. He hadn't known that, but it made sense. Everything about her journey had been layered, fear wrapped in courage, silence wrapped in hope. She folded the sweater carefully and put it back in the drawer. I think I'm ready to wear it again, she said. Not as a shield, just as me. The next morning she did. She wore the blue cardigan to work, paired with jeans and her old boots, the ones with the scuffed toes. When she came home, she didn't take it off right away. Just sat at the table sipping tea, looking more like herself than she had in years. A few days later, she asked him something that surprised them both. Will you come to parent-teacher night with me? He blinked. You're taking classes? Started last week, she said. Intro to psychology. The professor said family involvement helps with motivation. He smiled. I'd be honored, so they went. Him in his best shirt, her with her notebook and a pen tucked behind her ear. They sat in folding chairs in a too-bright classroom, listening to a young instructor talk about brain plasticity and resilience. Afterward, the professor shook his hand. You should be proud, he said. She's one of the most thoughtful students I've had. On the drive home, she was quiet. Then, out of nowhere, I think I want to be a counselor. He glanced at her. Helping people like you were helped? Yeah, she said. I know what it's like to feel trapped. To think no one sees you? If I can help even one person find their way out, it'd mean something. It already does, he said. The seasons began to turn. Leaves fell. Frost appeared on the windows. She kept going to class. He kept fixing things. And every Sunday, without fail, they made pancakes together, her at the stove, him at the table. The radio playing old songs neither of them knew the words to but hummed anyway. One afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, he found the old photo album, the $1 one from the clearance bin. He brought it inside and set it on the coffee table. She picked it up, flipped through the pages of strangers' lives, then stopped at the last photo, the one of him, looking lost in aisle 9. I'm glad I took that, she said. Why? Because it proved you were still looking, and that meant I wasn't really alone. He sat beside her. You were never alone. Not really. She leaned into him, the album resting on her lap. Outside, the wind rustled the bare branches of the oak tree in the yard. Inside, the house was warm, full of light, full of second chances. And in that moment, neither of them needed to say it out loud. They both knew, you don't have to be lost to find your way back. Sometimes you just need someone who refuses to stop waiting for you.